What's going on, everyone? So we got some minor details, nothing crazy, nothing major, nothing that is going to ruin Scream 7 or anything like that. But a couple details about the upcoming Scream 7 that I wanted to talk about. Obviously, always take this stuff with a grain of salt. Everything's a rumor until it actually comes out. But just some fun, interesting things that I think would be fun to discuss and go over, talk about. But the reason I want to talk about, or doing this intro the way I am, is because I want to give people a chance, because I know some people don't want to hear anything. They don't want to hear, what color the street light is, right? Like they don't want to hear nothing, right? So if you're one of those people and you need to click off, I completely understand. No hard feelings. Just please hit that like button on the way out. Hit that subscribe button on the way out. But if you're somebody that's still here, then let's get into it. I'll give you 3, 2, 1. All right. So diving right into it. Again, this comes from Jude Jajara. Probably butchered that. But he's somebody that has been sharing a lot of Scream 7 information. Seems very credible. Obviously, again, take it all with a grain of salt. You never know until the film actually comes out or it's confirmed by the studio or whatever. But Scream 7, minor details. Early unmasking, courtesy of a sharp ton survivor. Touch on that here in a moment. The teen's first appearance is in front of Sidney's coffee house. So this one I just want to briefly touch over because, like I said, I think this is a real minor one. But, you see all the teens, the new kind of characters, and it says Sidney's coffee house. So, there's the bar. Is it going to be a bar and coffee house? Or is it going to be just a coffee house? Is the bar something completely unrelated? Because there's a lot of rumors going around. And this is why you always get like conflicting reports, conflicting things, but there were a lot of rumors going around that Sidney either worked or owned the bar. So it says coffee house. So, I think that's interesting, but we're going to get to meet them in front. Tatum's first scene features some drama with her mother, which I think is something that is kind of exciting. And that I actually want to talk about here briefly here in a moment. And then lastly, Gale, Chad, and Mindy stay at Sidney's house while in town. Makes sense. We know that those 3 are supposed to be in town for various reasons. It would make sense. Like, hey, they're going to stay with Sidney. We've seen images and pictures of Sidney's house. It looks spacious enough to accommodate those 3. And it's Sidney Prescott. She'd be more than happy and more than welcoming to all of them. Plus, Gale and her are besties. So anyway, those are kind of the, like I said, minor spoilers. Nothing crazy about that. But diving into a couple kind of key things. The early unmasking. Right now, we got that technically with, Jason and Greg and whatnot. But if this is going to be an actual like killer in the movie, I think this is something interesting. Question becomes, is this a unmasking that, basically puts an end to the Ghostface? Like they take out Ghostface and then unmask them? Or is it an unmasking and they know who the killer is now? Right? And the killer's still out there. Right? There's a lot of ways that they can kind of play this. Obviously, look, an early Ghostface unmasking is something that, we've shared, we've all talked about for as long as I've had this channel, even beyond, right? Having that unmasking. That's kind of what the Jason Greg theme was. Kind of, give the fan service, give the, hey, people have always talked about having a Ghostface, an early reveal. Here's that early reveal. Well, it looks like we might get a full-fledged early reveal. Again, take it with a grain of salt, but I do think that that's something that would be pretty cool. I do think that that's something that could be exciting for many of us and many of the fans, just because, you kind of get an early glimpse. Obviously, execution, delivery, storytelling, all of those things are very important with how they approach it. It needs to be done in a good, proper manner. And it says sharp ton, which leads me to believe that maybe it's Gale Weathers, right? I've seen a lot of people talk about that's probably who it is. Maybe it's somebody else. It could be a new character entirely, and they're just kind of like have a little potty mouth or something. But Gale does make the most sense to potentially be that character that is described for the early Ghostface reveal, which I would be all for. But next up, Tatum and Sidney. I'm actually really excited about that because it's something that I've talked about, right? I really want to see a glimpse into, and I hope it's something that they don't really just like brush over. Really want to see a glimpse into Sidney's family life, right? Is she that overprotective parent? Is she that helicopter parent? Is she super strict and, like protective, overbearing to a point? Right? How is she as a mother? How is she as a wife? Is she calm, cool, collected? Is she, a little aggressive? Does she have walls? Right? How is her and her husband's relationship? Right? How is her and Mark's relationship? Is it a Cinderella story, or is it kind of like this a bit toxic? Is it like there's so many different things that you could kind of gaze into, right? And Sidney and her daughter's relationship. You got to imagine that Sidney Prescott, being Sidney, is probably a little overbearing, right? She's probably a little overprotective because of the life that she had, and she has a young daughter who's just like, dude, you're suffocating me. Like, I can't even do anything. All my friends get to go do this and go do that, and I have to stay here, right? Like, and have that pushback and stuff. It makes sense to kind of approach this Scream movie in that manner, in that direction. And kind of, I'm excited to hear these things because I do want a glimpse into Sidney's life. I do want a glimpse into Sidney's world. I don't want it to be something that they just kind of brush over. And it's like, oh, hey, here's Sidney, here's her kids, here's her family, and that's that. Create good characters, create good dialogue. Develop that story between her and her daughter, right? Maybe her daughter puts herself in a couple compromised positions that Sidney has to go and bail her out of because she's, thinking she's grown or whatever. She's thinking like she doesn't have to listen to mom or whatever, right? Like those are the kind of things that I think really build, the characters and the family dynamic and the relationships and all that stuff. Her being a little rebellious would make some sense, right? Sidney kind of being very reminded, like, man, like there's talks about kind of a mirrored scene with Tatum and her boyfriend that mirrors Sidney and Billy. Right? I love that. I love those ideas of like, her just kind of understanding and, but she's just, because of the traumas of her life, really kind of, invested in like, overprotecting her daughter. I love that idea. But kind of last is like, you have Sidney and Gale, who are supposed to be kind of in the forefront of this film. Obviously, a Sidney-led film. She's supposed to get 40 plus minutes in this upcoming film. Gale's supposed to be around 20 minutes. It makes sense that Sidney would be, inviting Gale, welcoming them open arms, her and the Meeks twins, especially because Gale's supposed to be going through some kind of cancel culture type of drama. So, it's not like she has a ton of friends that she can rely on and help her out. So, Sidney is that they've always had that like love-hate relationship. And I hope that there's some dynamic between them. Right? I'd love to see them kind of get in a little spouting match or whatever, kind of, build their character, like show that love-hate relationship a little bit, show that kind of like, I would do anything for you, but I'd also smack the taste out of your mouth type thing, right? Like, almost like a sisterly type of relationship in a way. I just think that that's kind of something that they've always had. They've always kind of had this bond. They've always had this relationship. They've always had these things, but there's always this kind of tension between them at times. It feels like, right? It feels like they're at any moment they're about to get to fisticuffs here a little bit. So kind of again explore things and really tell some depth into these characters. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? What do you think of these little insights, these little nuggets? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Mixed in the middle. Love to hear it. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. We enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel. What are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.